Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Sarah Entz, and I am the Promotions and Publicity Coordinator at the University of Manitoba Press. To everyone here on Zoom and to everyone joining us on Facebook Live, welcome to the virtual launch of Recipes and Reciprocity, Building Relationships Through Research, edited by Hannah Tait Neufeld and Elizabeth Finnis. I am very excited to hear from our presenters tonight, and I hope that everyone is ready for a very cozy evening because not only will we be discussing this beautiful book tonight, we will also be watching a soup recipe demonstration. So even though it snowed last night in Winnipeg, we are in for a warm and bright evening tonight. I'd like to begin this event by acknowledging that the University of Manitoba Press is located on the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. U of M Press respects the treaties that were made on these territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we dedicate ourselves to moving forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. We are grateful that we were able to gather virtually tonight and to come together from many different geographical places. 3 of tonight's speakers are, for example, making soup together on the University of Guelph campus, which is located within the Dish with One Spoon territory and on Treaty 3 land. I want to encourage all of our attendees tonight to consider your own relationship to the land you live on, whether you are a guest or part of a host nation, and to continue to engage in the work of reconciliation. I'm going to share a 30% off code in the chat, which you can use if you buy Recipes and Reciprocity directly from the U of M Press website. If you'd like to purchase the book but don't want to do it through our website, we urge you to support independent bookstores. McNally Robinson Booksellers located in Winnipeg and Saskatoon, and Bookshelf in Guelph are great examples. They do a lot for their local writers and they do ship across Canada. So here is the discount code. I'll make sure I'm sending it to everyone here. Okay. So tonight we have 4 speakers joining us. We'll begin with an introduction to the book by Elizabeth Finnis, who is zooming in, and then we'll turn things over to Hannah, Kitty, and Adrianne, who are preparing soup in the kitchen. After their presentations, we will be opening the floor to questions. So please type your questions into the chat box at the bottom of the screen or into the Q&A box at any moment throughout the evening. And then at the end of the night, we'll collect all those questions and Elizabeth will answer them or pose them to Hannah, Kitty, and Adrianne. So we'll have a chance to engage with these wonderful people. And please don't hesitate to send me a message at any moment this evening through the chat if you have any Zoom-related questions or difficulties. It is now my pleasure to welcome and introduce Elizabeth Finnis, one of the editors of this beautiful collection. Elizabeth Finnis is an anthropologist and associate professor in the Department of Sociology and Anthropology at the University of Guelph. Her research focuses on agricultural and dietary transitions, environmental change, rural livelihoods, and marginalization, and she has worked in India, Paraguay, and Ontario, Canada. Her work has been published in a range of disciplinary and interdisciplinary journals, as well as in edited volumes. Welcome to Beth.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for that lovely introduction to the evening. And thanks to everyone for coming to this launch. I'm just going to say a few words introducing this volume, which has been a long time in the making. Hannah and I first started talking about the possibility of an edited volume sometime in 2018, I think. And we were interested in bringing together interdisciplinary writing about food and cooking to think about research, relationships, and how food questions could emerge in unexpected ways throughout the course of research, regardless of whether food was at the center of a specific research agenda. The authors in this volume use recipes, food sharing, and food preparation as lenses to consider a range of issues, from identities to the reclaiming of foodways, to exploring social and political change, and to reflecting on what it means to work with people in diverse research projects towards a range of goals. We hope that the chapters encourage both researchers and non-researchers alike to think about what it means to cook together and share food together in different spaces and times, while considering how cuisines and dishes are shaped by local, ecological, seasonal, historical, political, social, and cultural contexts. We also hope that this volume encourages readers to think about the ways that food and culinary practices can help to build, reinforce, or resist relationships, both interpersonal and more broadly. The contributing authors to this book have written beautiful, richly detailed chapters that are evocative and thought-provoking, and I'm truly thankful to have been able to work with Hannah and each of the authors throughout this process, as well as with all the wonderful and supportive staff at the University of Manitoba Press. So with that brief intro to the book, let me just briefly introduce our three speakers for tonight. Hannah Tait Neufeld is an associate professor at the University of Waterloo and a Tier 2 Canada Research Chair in Indigenous Health, Wellbeing, and Food Environments. Adrianne Xavier is an Onondaga woman from the Six Nations of the Grand River First Nations Territory and an assistant professor in the departments of Anthropology and Indigenous Studies at McMaster University. Kitty R. Lynn Lickers is a grandma, a mother, and a storyteller. She holds a master's degree in social justice and community engagement. Kitty spent many years feeding people in her community of Six Nations of the Grand River Territory and believes in cooking, growing, eating, preserving, and sharing good food. Hannah, Adrianne, and Kitty are going to prepare one of the recipes from the book, which can be found in the chapter written by Adrianne and Kitty. Thank you so much to the three of you for being our expert hosts tonight. And I will pass the reins to you now.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I'm Kitty.
I'm Adrianne. And I'm Hannah.
So happy to be here with you. I am the cook. So I think I'm going to let these ladies do a lot of the talking while I'm prepping things. I will start off first by just doing a really quick, here's what's in the soup. So the Three Sisters soup is one of my favorite soups to make. It's got a rich history. It's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old. It would have been a Haudenosaunee recipe for me, coming from Six Nations, but it's similar. Soups are made in other places in South America, in Mexico, in Italy, and there's lots of places in the world where they make a soup with squash and beans and corn. So this is my take on the Three Sisters soup. I call it Twisted Sister soup because usually it's just squash and corn and beans, but I add to it. I add a few things to it to make it more, so it can go further, so you can feed more people, so a big family can have it. We were talking earlier about how purchasing a can of pasta in the store is more expensive than purchasing, say, a can of beans. The recipe itself starts with squash. One squash, right now, squash is super expensive, but in about a week, it'll go from the $4.99 down to about $1. Or in some places, if you go to a farm, you can probably get them for 75 cents or 50 cents. And they store well. If you wrap it up in paper and find the coldest spot in your house and stuff it in that cold spot, under the bed, in the corner of the room that you save for when your in-laws come, those kind of spaces. So squash will keep good that way. The greens are a little expensive as the time goes on, but it'll be a good thing to get it now, and they're easy to prepare. They're very easy to prepare. So for me, I just pull the leafy part off. This part I chop up really, really fine, and I use this when I make a vegetable soup. So that's also that. This is the special part, why this is a special recipe to me. this is our indigenous corn. This is our corn. So that's the corn that you see here. It's hard. And there's been a lot of research about this. And in fairness, in different ways, how it was prepared, why it was prepared, how people used it, how we came about to store it, what did it do for your body? So corn, beans, and squash, if you eat that as just your diet, if that's all you have, there's enough protein, enough carbohydrates, enough, there's a few these trace elements missing from it that you would get. You just have to throw, it's going to sound terrible, just have to throw a handful of soil in your soup periodically to get that from the topsoil. But then you're getting everything. So the amino acids are there. All of that is in there. It's best if you use dried beans, but canned beans works just as well. I'm just going to talk about, I could spend the entire night, the whole night, talking about how to take this hard corn, this soft, delicious white corn. This is not easily available. It's not something you can go in the store and purchase unless you come down to a reserve or you know someone that's coming down to Six Nations. But you can use exactly the same thing if you grow and process hominy. And hominy is easy to grow. It's one of the corns that's easier to grow. It's also available, readily available in almost every grocery store. So, and Hannah, you said you saw it. Yeah, so you guys jump in and because this isn't the kiddie show, right? I might be the kiddie show. I just wanted to talk a bit about squash because some people feel kind of daunted when they're squash. And how does this relate to our book and our recipe and all of that? This was one of the soups that I would make for our community or for our team that worked together, or I make for family, or I make for there's a program where I would feed seniors in a drive-through, and this was their favorite. I would make this soup. This was their absolute favorite. But people that I would always ask for help on these days because squash takes the most time. You can purchase it pre-prepared. This one was pre-prepared especially for us by Hannah. She roasted it, which is what I do. She did it really pretty. If I'm gonna roast it ahead of time, this would just get holes poked in it and thrown in the oven. So then I pull it out when it's still kind of hard and it will still get into chunks. And not about hard work. No hard work. Nobody wants to do something that's going to take a whole bunch of time unless, and here's the reference, you guys did this earlier, unless they're Julie Child. So if you have that kind of time to prep your meal, you can painstakingly peel it and all of that, that will work. What I always suggest to people is to take a very large knife, cut one side down so that when you lay it down, it doesn't roll anywhere. And it's the safest for you and it's not gonna, you're not gonna get hurt. And this is the soup part of it, but there's a lot of, the soup is rich, but there's a lot of richness about sharing soup. And when she said it snowed in Winnipeg, we weren't on camera yet. And I went, ugh, because that was like, oh no, please tell me that's not true. But this is the soup in particular is that one thing when somebody asks me, let's hold out, what do you want? And they'll talk about soup. And when you talk about soup, everyone has a story to tell about their favorite soup, right? What was your favorite soup as a kid? Oh, my mom used to make this. My one friend says, the best soup in the whole wide world is the soup that is got big meatballs in it and, depending where they're from, right? Everybody has their own favorite soup. And if you're doing any kind of investigation, research, involvement into things, there has to be a connection, right? So all of these foods here for this soup tonight are connected. The squash and the beans and the corn together create that perfect food, that perfect meal to eat. I was joking earlier. I said to Adrianne, you're gonna have to read the recipe to me because I don't ever really use a recipe. It was kind of fun. One place where I worked, they had me doing soups and soup share programs and stuff. And it was cute because I would make the pot of soup beforehand because they would have people and they started with one, then they had two following behind me with a clipboard and a pencil and paper, and they would write the recipes down really quick. And one of the girls was in school and she used that as a topic for how she did research about food. So that was a portion of what she did. So it gets in there no matter what. Every bit of things is research. I think the biggest researchers in the world right now is our little guys. The ones that say, Google says, they're researching. Periodically, I'll just ask my grandchildren, I say, what did Google say about, and I'll ask them about something that is thought-provoking, you know, beyond who's the biggest YouTuber right now. And it's a way to start people looking at things in a different kind of way. So,
Well, that's my favorite part, is like, we'll be talking about something and my niece, who's 11 right now, she's like, I was searching up something the other day, and to search it up is cooler than Google. You don't say you Google it anymore, you say I searched it up.
yeah, it's not cool to say Google it.
Yeah. But there are tons of things where her and my nephew, he's 9, and he comes up with the most amazing conversation. Sometimes I worry, it's like, I'm not gonna be smart enough to hang out with this kid really quick here, because he will take a concept and then he applies it to like large scale things. So he understands video games, but then he says, but what about when that happens in real life? How does people know to make that connection? And he's building networks in his mind that are, I mean, they surpass some, that's my, you know, all of the students, they surpass some of the people that I've been working with in his willingness to be open. And I think that's the thing, is the creativity of being able to search it up at any time, because every kid had an iPad or something during COVID. So it got really accessible. Yeah. And it is, it's that accessibility and being open to research that we all want to, that I look.
And you'll notice a big part of that is connection, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
We're always talking about being connected.
Speaking of creativity, can I ask a question? So if someone was making a more traditional, I suppose, Three Sisters soup, how would that be different from the Twisted Sister soup that is included in the book that you're making?
There are every family, every person that makes the soup has their own recipe. In a Three Sisters soup with our sustenance or the Three Sisters, the difference would be it would be squash, which is for me the base. And one of the things I talk about is it depends if it's for your family, because then it's a little bit thinner. If it's for the elderly, it's a little bit thicker. You put more squash in, the ratio is different. That's the only thing that's different. But it's that some kind of dried bean. So we brought like it could be black beans, could be white beans, and these are the beans, Hannah, that you prepared. So just a white bean most often. This, interestingly enough, is the most common one that people think about in it, and I will put it in, but it's the least likely for me to use because kidney beans are really hard to digest.
Right.
They have a really thick, hard skin. But I'm more used to when we're making soup to say, okay, so put your squash in, let it cook till it's mushy, smash it with a potato masher or a blender. Then you can add your beans and corn, and then you let it cook. And this soup tastes really fast, especially when things are prepared. Some people will put fresh green beans, and we're going to. Some people won't, but that's it. It would be corn, it would be beans, and it would be squash. And depending on the time of year, like if you're logical, you don't have beans in the winter like this unless you've stored them. It would be a dried bean that would be soaked, and they have to be prepared ahead of time. Because if you put your dry beans in with your other stuff, everything else will disappear. You will have nothing, just little hard beans in there. That's what Three Sisters soup actually, like, some variation on that. Some people will use salt, pepper, some people won't. I put a little bit of thyme in there, which is what I'm doing right now. With the squash, I don't use any kind of oil. I don't use any kind of thing like that. However, when I serve this, I very often will put it in a bowl, and I'll put a tablespoon of real butter in it. Now, and we wouldn't have done that long ago.
Is that an homage to Julie Child?
Everything's better with butter. I do it because, especially if especially if I'm making the soup, I will add some sort of fat to it like that. Especially if I'm making a pot of soup to take to someone who's elderly, because quite often that's where they most often eat that portion of it. And people say, well, you know, sometimes my grandma's kind of chubby. Well, even though grandmas are chubby, they need that the butter it doesn't have to be butter. It can be olive oil. It can be any kind of, and I have done that in the past as well. I had a friend of mine got me a bottle of olive oil that their family makes. They live in Toronto, and brought it to me and drizzle that over the soup, because that little bit extra is the part that their points and the health component, right? So there's more to this than just fabulous recipes, and you know, there's actual things behind it, how we care for each other, how we take care of it, how we make our lives better by making someone else's life better. Because, and you have to do research. And I know, Adrianne, I was gonna very jokingly say you to read the recipe too, but they can check it out in the book if they want to. But I will roast the squash if I'm making a big pot. I'm used to making pots of soup for like a couple hundred people. And I'm less, this small amount is going to be so cute. Because for me, one of it's the key thing that brings people together. So Adrianne said to me, Grandma's got this project going on, you want to be part of it? I'm like, yeah, recipe book. She goes, no, not a recipe.
I share a recipe. I'm like, you don't use them. Why are we having this conversation? So just so you guys all know, I had to follow my mom around with a notepad and be like, here's the things that I know go in it. Do you have any idea of measurements? And then still chase that piece of what to me is, and it says mothers are, I'm a mother. Usually when I'm being exercising or, you know.
Yes.
Most of that's no. But I had to engage that. I have seen this recipe a million times. I have helped to serve it. I have, you know, ladled it. I have cut things. I have collected reads. She sent me to, you know, X number of places to go grab this from, you know, the garden. But it never dawned on me to write down the specifics, like the very technical piece. It's not my recipe. And that's the part that makes me laugh, is like those connections that we talk about. When a family has a recipe for this soup, for Three Sisters soup, it's their family's recipe. And like, I'm full scale, 100% a soup snob. Like that. I didn't realize it until I went to, like, I was at Queen's University and I was there on a pre-doc. And someone brought out soup and they had a label, you know, it's Three Sisters soup. And I looked at it and I'm like, whoa. Listen, I've seen Twisted Sister soup. It's great. This has got cousins and like the neighbors are in it. And it's too much. There was potatoes and like hot peppers. I called my mom. I'm like, Mom, I was in the car outside of this event. You don't understand. They don't know what's going on here. I'm coming home. I can't do this. They're trying to tell me this soup is like Three Sisters. I'm like, and every cousin ever.
I remember when you came to Disney one time and I made you carrot soup and you were just like, Well, let's see.
And I'm appreciative, like, don't get me wrong, it's the relationship, it totally is, it's about that connection to people. And it's just, I think that one of the things about the book that I loved reading after the fact is I know my own, I know my own chapter. I know that on paper, it's us incarnate. People will get a sense of my mom and I when we read that chapter, because you can hear us. And now if literally you'll be able to hear us, because if you heard us tonight, then you'd be like, she's making fun, somebody's picking on someone, you know, there's a joke behind it, or there's a feeling behind it. But one of the parts that I found the most exciting to see other people is I don't want to say that I worry, but it made me happy to hear how other people realized they felt about sharing. Because when you go into a community, and I, you know, graduated quite some time ago from my undergrad, researchers, there's this perception that it, you know, it felt really clean, or it felt like Indiana Jones. People had a vest and a hat, and then, you know, I want a bullwhip, and then there's this fun adventure to it. But part of the premise of that is I'm in it. I am here. You can't. It's not through a looking glass. This isn't, you know, it's not Alice in Wonderland. Alice in Wonderland would be cool, but we're not. It's not one-sided. We are asking people to open their lives to us, and part of that is the gratitude that should come with that, of them being willing, because they're literally giving of themselves when we are asking, sometimes about food, and not every research is about food, but that's still how it happens. How many times do you have a conversation over a cup of tea, and there's a chapter on tea, and I was like, yes, I can just imagine. And I can also imagine, you know, if someone brought me carrot soup, and I'm like, I don't eat soft carrots.
She doesn't like cooked carrots.
I know. No, and I mean, that's the thing. What happens if it's your specialty? What happens if someone brings you, you know, Twisted Sister soup, and you're so proud, and this is your thing, and you walked in the door and you don't eat beans, or, you know, like, how does this work?
That's why the connection is so important. I replaced my butternut with an acorn, because any kind of squash can be used. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be butternut. And I'm adding that in because what you're saying is important about things being a recipe, being a family recipe, or a way that it's done, or and Hannah makes great soup. You make great soup. I've had your soup many times, and I really enjoy it.
And you're not saying that.
No.
I mean,
So that's a big deal. I've added the green beans just to keep everyone caught up. So we've got the squash. I cooked it down and it's mashed up. Added green beans. I don't know. I could probably tip this a little bit, or I don't know how that works. I'm not the cameraman. Good. Okay. So you can. It's kind of cooking. This goes in at the very end. So I'm not doing all of what's here because there is enough here to make soup for about 75 people. This soup goes a really long way. It goes a really long way. I want those green beans a little bit more. It's so far it's got a vegetable broth in it, but you can start with water. It doesn't have to be. This is a fabulous recipe. I just know everyone's going to want the book literally so they can make this soup. It's vegetarian, but I have had people make it and add, and it was kind of good. They made little meatballs out of ground turkey.
Oh, really? I was bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they brought me some, they're like, I know feel about soup and about stuff. Yeah. And then, fortunately for me, the meatball recipe was also so
Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah. So, and it was good. I was surprised, and I'm kind of a purist when it comes to this soup in particular. I never add meat to it. I just never do. But we can. Yeah. That's the secret. Honestly, that is the secret. And if you do chop it up and put it on a cookie sheet, like like I do like to do it like that as well, to peel it and chop it into pieces and put it on, just on a baking sheet in the oven. I'll drizzle it with a little bit of olive oil, or avocado oil is my new favorite oil. So avocado oil on it, and I'll sprinkle salt on it. I'll put a little pepper. The last time I did it, someone had given me these little spice things, and one of them was everything bagel. Everything bagel. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Put that on there. Oh my goodness, it was so good. It was like I was eating the squash. It's not gonna be enough for the soup. It was so good. But you can do that, and then like, so for example, if this was a whole squash, right? So we've got half of it in the soup. I've got some mashed down, the beans are in there. This can be this itself. I've done this for children because they're the most discerning. I don't like to say a child is picky. I don't like to say they don't like to eat vegetables. I don't like to say any of those things. They're discerning. They have their own palate. But you have to connect with them. So, and I've spent a lot of time working with kids, and that's a lot of folks. So kids really, really like squash if you roast it, cut it into these cubes, not so that it's mushy, but no hardness to it. And then roll it in wheat germ that you've seasoned, and bake it in the oven like a tater tot.
Yeah.
Telling you, yeah, so good, so good. I mean, you can do your own kind of topping, but the wheat germ is good for you. So, and I'm always about getting things into folks. We've gotten so disconnected from food, right? With especially, I have tons and tons of folks that I follow and check in on, and that garden. And one of the things that it appeals to me about doing that is the fact that they will start drawing people to them. So one lady came, I showed her how to make a 4x4 lasagna garden, which is kind of sort of the way we would have done a mound. It would have been that same thing. The part about putting fish into a mound, people talk about that when Indigenous folks use fish. I've found now that the raccoons are too prevalent and they like to dig it up. So you can make a slurry out of it. They'll dig one and not find it. So then you can also make them a space away from your garden. But this family in particular started a little 4x4 garden, and she grew a zucchini and 2 tomato plants and green onions. There's this odd little collection of things that she grew. Their garden now encompasses their whole backyard, their whole entire backyard. It was about a 4 or 5 year process, but yeah, they grow all, and they've purchased freezers and all of that kind of thing too. And all of that, that in itself is a story, right? That story it's essentially research, like what happened, where did it start, and how did it get going, and why are we doing the things we're doing now?
My doctoral research was the basis of the program. So my mom and I ran a security program. I say that we ran a program that started out as a farmer's market and a garden. And I don't think I'll ever forget this. One of the things that I was asked, I think the year before we both moved on from there, was like, what would you hope for your program to be one day when it grows up? And I said, absolutely unnecessary.
Right.
I used to make a joke all the time, like I'm a fan of the Grinch movie, and so I tell people all the time, I'm going to solve world hunger and tell nobody. And it was this question of, like, everyone looks at me like, and even my boss at the time, when I said, I hope one day that this program is unnecessary.
Right.
But the reality is when I did my research for my doctorate, the truth was what I was documenting and what I was actually asking at the time was, where did we stop being provide food for people, like centered program, and when did we start empowering people? And that's really what it became, is this conversation of, I found my goal at the end of each day, month, was how many people was I able to put in front of my mom? How many people got to have the experience of working with one of my staff to make something different or make, and I tell people all the time, you go and you meet people in the community and they're like, how do you get into work with food security? And I'm like, make friends, don't be jerks. That is my advice forever for everyone. How do you start research? I'm working in, right now, I have a project and it is, you know, like university accepts, it's an actual project on building relationships, on community building for my students, for research. Because part of that conversation is when we do research, how do you engage in Indigenous community research? How do you engage in research, no matter who it is that you're working with? And I'm not asking, okay, everyone has to go out and make a new best friend and that's who you research with. That's not what relationship building is. It's going to a space and being with people and sharing food, sharing a recipe, sharing of yourself, to know that when that reciprocity comes, I believe that it's my inherent life to ensure that I'm not taking without it being done in a good way. And that good way, sometimes it's giving back, sometimes it's giving food to people who don't have it, sometimes it's giving, you know, recognition for the people who did the hard labor of the situation. Sometimes it's helping to make a connection down the road. But when you are doing research, the truth is, we are asking a lot of people. Yeah. And we need to do, I need to do the research that they want. I'm not here to give this grand idea. I'm not as smart as my nephew. Like, he's just, he searches up stuff and I'm just like, I would never have occurred to me to even look at that. But we work together, and over the years, I have listened to people tell me their story. And a lot of times the best stories are the ones where they tell me their first. Your mom taught me this. I was able to, I made my house smell like my grandma. Because when I was a kid, you know, she canned things, she made jam, she did, you know, she had this soup, and forever, like every one of my nieces, like my cousins, sorry, have asked me, and they call her Auntie Kitty, or, and they all call her MK actually, Mama Kitty.
Oh, really?
So MK makes this thing, and can you tell me what it is? And I will very casually, because there was no. So then I have to skirt around and do the whole thing. If you were gonna make this, how would you put it? And she knows, because I'm not making it, so she knows it's not for me. But we all have that one moment of connection with someone, and with Mommy, most often it is food. It's that she has a recipe, she has a class, she has a garden, something there is. It is that peace, that focus. And when someone is able to vocalize that so clearly, that this is the moment, you know, this is the moment when I was taking a soup class with Kitty, and now I work in a restaurant, and I didn't cook.
This particular person she's talking about. But when I read the book through, that's one of the things that the pieces that I picked up in several different sections of it, that everybody has that part where it's about the connection, right? It's about the connection. And I'm just gonna catch you guys up on the soup real quick.
Yeah.
So, the beans are in, all the different beans. I just added the corn. I put a little bit of thyme in there and a little bit of salt. There's always this difficulty, and it gets argued round and round, especially on our community. Did we use salt? Yes, we did. There's a salt, in Onondaga, there's salt caves, there's salt. In Windsor, there's salt. We traded everything. That's right. Peppers, tomatoes are here because we traded. All of that happened. And you can hear that word, the traded word. That's that give and take, right? That reciprocity that comes. And I'm the first one to say this. And people are always coming to me and saying, "Can I quote you on that?" I'm like, yes. I always say Indigenous people have the answers. We have the answers to being connected, in tune with the earth. And I'm not saying every Indigenous person does, but in the Indigenous ways of knowing and being, the information is there. And I think what's important now, because it's going to take more than just the Indigenous folks, more than just us, that we have to work together. We have to connect together. And how will we do that? Some of it is doing research. Some of it is connecting to other communities. Some of it is, asking someone like, how would you do this? How is this going to work? And asking in such a way that you have something to give, right? The old ways of doing research and taking information, taking things. And I could get into a whole conversation about isms right now that I don't need to get into, right? We're going to keep this to soup and closeness and connection. Just turning this down.
I'm mindful of, and part of that is we work together. So my mom and I have worked together for many years. And now it's just where like I go places and I very casually bring her along with me. And I enjoy that. But we are I think we're almost nearing the end of this whole party already.
I know, I was just checking the time. Almost, can I ask one more question? Where we open it up and a couple of questions. For all the amazing work that you've both done in your community in academic work, how did you guys decide on the topic of your chapter? Not just the recipe itself, but to write the soup.
Well, for me, and you'll do your own answers. For me, soup is people. Everything in the soup has a person. Everybody has a being, right? So it's people. Taking all of that and putting it together and creating something that tastes wonderful, that feels beautiful, that hugs you from the inside out, that touches your soul. That's what soup does. And when you talk about gathering information from people and doing research and the reciprocity component of it, I think that's why soup is so impactful. That's why when someone says, "What's your favorite soup?" Everybody goes, my absolute favorite is this. You immediately touch someone when you ask them about soup. And it's the same reason. It's a family thing. And even I talked to, and this is how I help folks with this. I talked to someone who had a terrible childhood. Awful. It was terrible. They said this. Their most fondest memory was being taken because the lady they got taken to had her help make soup that day, right? And she kept thinking, my brother would like, my sister would like. And when they got back together, when they were a little bit older, he had them make that soup together. So, connection. It connects us. Food always connects people. I mean, we all know that. If you want folks to come, you make something to eat. If you want to connect to them, I think soup does that. Soup is the way that does that. Reminds us all that we're still just human beings, living on a planet, working together to make it better, right? And this book will touch you in that way. Thanks for asking. Adrianne.
I follow that.
It's fun. Interestingly enough, in much the same vein, when I thought about, okay, we're gonna write about a recipe, and I laughed because one of my favorite questions to ask people is like, what's your favorite food? And I've had like gamut of answers from foods and strangers and people that talk. And there's like I have a pretty standard number of recipes or answers to that. Potatoes is one answer, and sushi and pizza are like. And then when I ask them what their favorite memory of food is, it's something different. But for me, as soon as I started thinking about it, it was the premise of giving back. So that relationship between my mom making soup, because at the time when we were doing this, I thought back to we ran a program together where we borrowed space from another group of like another organization, just to be able to like come inside out of the cold to have, you know, access to the bathroom. And they went out and worked all day. We're not even in the space, and they would come back, you know, it's minus stupid outside, and not like Manitoba.
Not like-
Not that, but they would go out and work all day, and they would come in, and I remember the very first time that Mom made soup for them. I was at home still, I was on my way into the office, and she sent me a message, and she's like, what's left over in the fridge? Because the boys are coming back, it's gonna be a million below out, it's cold outside today, and that's just the thing. And I remember 5 years down the road, someone else in our organization, like in our community, asked me, how is it that you always have, like, your lane is always cut first, your grass is always cut, you have, you know, all of these things. And the boys who did that, and I told the boys, you know, some of them were my age, older, whatever, but the boys who did that were like, soup day, man. If I don't have a lane, like, she doesn't come and there's no food. And it made me laugh, but
I didn't remember that first soup. I can remember it.
we had sausage in the fridge, there was, living jars in the greenhouse because she was testing different beds for like in the winter time. And there was just a whole bunch of, you know, like there was like, I think we had 2 big potatoes in the fridge, and there were like, it was literally our leftovers that first day, and we fed a dozen people. And they were like, this is the best soup, I've never had anything like it. And I
Is that
was,
good to see?
that was the first.
Another recipe I knew.
Yeah, so it's a different recipe. One of the most popular from people like taking classes with them on this. But when I thought we have the chance to share a recipe that, I mean, A, is historic in our community, of course, you know, most rocker version, but to actually give a piece of the story of how I understand and how I understand our relationship, because people, I mean, probably have like a TV show end of the day. But it was just, it was a wonderful opportunity for me to be able to show again how I was taught to see the world.
Okay, thank you both so much. I think we're
I have questions.
here, yeah, we'll shift now to, I think Beth, are you there to start off the Q&A?
Yeah, I am here. So thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. The soup looks amazing. And so if anybody has any questions that you would like to ask, please feel free to type them into the chat or the Q&A. And I do have a couple of comments that were typed up. And so I'm just going to read them so that you guys can hear them. So the first one is, so these aren't questions, they're just comments. The first one is from Dahlia, who writes, thanks for having me here with you tonight. All of this is super cool and making me hungry. So I can definitely relate to that, because every time I reread a chapter during the process of putting this, I think, oh man, I really need to cook something delicious now. These chapters really make you want to cook good food. And there's also a comment from Tuche who writes, thanks so much for organizing this lovely book launch. I'm looking forward to exploring the book and trying the recipes. So thank you both to Dahlia and Tuche for your comments. So as I said, we've got some time for questions if anybody has anything that you'd like to ask, and I'm happy to read that out loud.
Added the greens at the end, so kind of folks want to try it.
I don't know how that works for, like, because this is on Facebook too, so is there also someone is monitoring that too?
Yes, I'm on it.
Because I'm trying to imagine her eyeballs watching all of the things.
Can you see the soup from like what's in the pot from?
I think it's on the bowl.
Yeah.
I have a question. I have a question from Tina Moffat, who's one of the contributors to the volume. And she writes, I can't wait to cook Twisted Sister soup, and asks, can you tell us more about the corn you're using and how you cook it?
Yes, the corn. So the corn that I'm using in particular, this is our white corn from our reserve. It grows in the field. It's actually just now ready to harvest. It's very hard. You braid it up and hang it up. A long time ago, it would have hung in the longhouse in the rafters dry. And you take off this first end and this end, and you leave the middle ones, because the middle ones are the best seeds. You keep those to plant in the spring. And you just take them off, and they go in. You can hear it. That's the best one. I love that one. I can do that all day. So that is then put into a bath of water and ashes, like ashes from a wood stove or wood fire. Hardwood ashes in particular, softwood ashes are gummy. So hardwood ashes, then you just sift them. You put the water in, you put the ash into the water, you drop these in, and it's the most amazing science thing in the world. They turn red. They'll turn red, and that, because the ash is literally, but it's live from the fire. It breaks down that outer shell, that hard shell. Because I could take these out and eat them, and it would be of no value to me without processing it. And this is why people say, shouldn't you process it? I'm like, well, I'm processing corn, and it's been processed for thousands of years, so I'm not sure about that. So it's processed. You have to process in order for it to become this. That's the outer shell is off. I'm just going to say this. I don't know who did this corn, because I didn't. We got it from someone else. They didn't take time, because I am very particular about cooking it until that eye comes off.
Okay.
Yeah, so you don't have to, but I am, just because I was taught that way. That you want those eyes to come off. It should be.
That's that black.
Yeah, it's just that's the place where the corn attaches to the cob. So there's fun things about the corn, lots of things. So you cook it until the skin turns red. You keep cooking it, and it'll start to slip off. It'll turn from that red to a yellowy color, and then it'll start to come off, and the corn will be white. You cook it for like another hour. You drain it, you rinse it, you put it back in water, you cook it for another hour. I did it, the process like it would have been done long ago with someone. At daybreak, he had to go down to the creek and get water. It took all day to make enough corn, to lie enough corn for a pot of soup. It took all day. So my recommendation, you can come and get it. You can come and get the corn on the reserve. I don't know if you can find anyone. Yeah, they're picking corn down there. I don't know if you can get it. I'm happy to share some with people if they really want it. I'd be delighted to send some. Yeah, I'm gonna get some to her. But hominy will work as well. And in Mexico, I know they use their flint corn, which is this only blue, and it's toothy. Their kernels are about that big. But it's that process of lying the corn that makes it into this deliciousness. This is such a good food. Everybody says, oh, it's carbohydrate. Oh, yeah, you're right. It is. And I'm sorry that you're engaging in the popular notion that carbohydrates are like good for the body, because that's not true. But it's also really good in the morning. They get put it in a bowl and add some fruit to it, a little bit of maple syrup, and you can eat it for breakfast. So that's the corn. That's this one. That's that process. So, but hominy will work.
Can you have the bowl of soup?
Yes. Okay, so let me see if we can make this pretty. This is what this will be the shot right here. Everybody's watching me make it. You do that on commercial, actually. There we go.
In Katie's cooking show.
There we go. There we go. And there's our Twisted Sister soup. I wish we had smell-o-vision. You guys could smell it. It smells really good in here.
Yeah, I can imagine it smells fantastic, and it looks beautiful and delicious. So
There is. There's a bite of Twisted Sister soup.
I'll bring some back.
Thank
Yeah.
Made half a pot.
Yeah, it's like, I'm gonna say, I don't think I've ever seen you make that small.
Even when I make soup at home, I make a big pot of soup and then we have what we want and then I give it out, take it to people and give it away. Because everybody wants a pot. Especially, I would really love to give some soup to the folks in Winnipeg where it's snowing. It is. It is very early. Although
Thank- Oh, I was just going to say thank you so much for answering Tina's question. And I think I guess I'm going to hand this over to Sarah now. So thanks.
Great, thank you so much. I cannot express how much I would love to have a bowl of this soup. It looks amazing. Thank you so much, Hannah, Elizabeth, Kitty, and Adrianne for all of these thoughtful reflections and your conversation. It's been wonderful watching you prepare the food and to talk about food. And I'm trying really hard to learn how to appreciate colder weather more and not dread it so much, since I live here. And one way I've been trying to do this is by referring to this time as soup season. Because like Kitty said, everyone has a story about soup, and soup brings people together and warms people up, and soup is how we can show care for each other. So so thank you very much to the four of you for kicking off soup season so wonderfully. And if you want to make any closing remarks or to say any thank yous, you can feel free to share now.
Kitty, did you want to say anything more?
I'm just so happy to have had the opportunity to be here. I love to see everyone anyway. Take care of each other and take care of yourself. Okay? Take care of yourself. Take care of you for me.
I would say big thank you to Kitty and Adrianne for making their way to go out here this evening, and for everything, all the love and the care that they put into their chapter, and also to the soup tonight. And we also want to thank the University of Guelph for allowing us to use their beautiful kitchen space. It's been wonderful. We've used this space in the past few nights and handing in the space before it was renovated. So it's very exciting to see it being used like this and being able to share it with you tonight. So, and thank you everyone on the call, on Facebook Live, and University of Manitoba Press for organizing the event.
We need to get a camera person on here.
Don't need to come on. Yeah, I'm pretty sure actually. We have one person needs help.
Yes, we appreciate it. We need to love on our text.
And thank you, Rebecca, for all your support, the person behind the scenes.
Yes.
Also be a part of this.
Yes. Thank you for all you did for us.
And thank you, Sarah, for all your organization and
Well, thank you so much to all of you. That brings us to the end of this evening. Thank you for coming to the launch of Recipes and Reciprocity. Here is the book again. You can purchase it, the print or the ebook version, from our website. I'll put in the chat one more time the 30% off code. And make sure to send it again to everyone and not just Beth here. There we go. So that's the 30% off discount code that you can use to buy the book. Thank you so much for coming. And thanks for teaching us how to make Twisted Sister soup. Have a great night, everyone.
Wanna